Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in the 7th chapter of the book of Revelation. Now, John was physically on the Greek island of Patmos. This was a penal colony of the Roman Empire located some isolated location around or near or in the Aegean Sea. It was an island specifically designated to house prisoners, and John was a prisoner because of his confession and the resurrection. He was the last one left. He was the last apostle standing, and the dating of this book is 96. It is the chronologically latest and narratively last. It is the capstone of the New Testament and the collected canon, the Bible itself. And it was revealed to him while he was on this island. And beginning in the 4th chapter, he is transfixed. He remains physically in Patmos, but he is transfixed. He has a vision, which is a revelation, which entails or is comprised of visionary components of what's going to come to pass. And these visions are apocalyptic in nature. So the first thing we find him in the 4th chapter is in the heavenly throne room. This is the whole sacred of sacreds, where these 4 living creatures, each of which has the face respectively of a lion, an ox, a man, and an eagle. And then there's also 24 elders. Our personal interpretation, certainly not unique to us. We didn't invent this theory that the 24 are the 12 apostles and the 12 tribes, or at least representative of the 12 tribes of Israel. Then in the 5th chapter, we read of a scroll, and there are seals on it. There's 7 seals, and no one in the earth, under it, above it, or anywhere at all in creation can be found who is worthy to open the seals of the books. And this causes John to weep. He is saddened by the fact, but then he receives the word of comfort and reassurance that weep not, for the Lion from the tribe of Judah, the root of David, that's the Messiah, he is worthy, the Lamb that was slain for the foundation of the earth. And then we read some of these creatures and also the elders and angels offering prayers expressing the worthiness of the Messiah to open these seals, which caused John to weep. And then in the we don't get to the 7th one. It's not even mentioned until the opening verse of the next chapter. But in the 6th chapter, we read of the breaking of the first 6 seals, and we just wanted to briefly review what each one is. The first 4 of which are horses, and a lot of the figures is borrowed from the 1st chapter of Zechariah. You can read that while I'm talking to you now. Zechariah chapters 1, verses 4 through 17, I believe. But the white horse is of conquest, and a lot of people mistake this for the Messiah himself, because white, we find that color a lot in the book of Revelation. It is representative of divinity, purity, and blamelessness, but this white horse is one of conquest. It could not be the Lamb, because the Lamb is the one who is opening the scroll, the seal, and we just want to define a seal before we elaborate further on the horses. Remember, the first 4 of these 6 seals are horses of judgment. A seal is a sign of ownership and protection. Our sign of ownership as Christians is we read in the book of Ephesians that the Spirit is our seal, and our the protective aspect of it is that the seals, there are saints who are sealed. We're going to meet 144,000 of them in the chapter we'll be covering today, as they are sealed to survive the tribulation. Now, maybe not necessarily physically, but survive eternally. And so the tribulation is going to test the faith like it's never been tested before. It's going to divide the fair weather disciples from the authentic article all the way. Now, the second plague, seal rather, is the red horse of blood. This is the one who goes about murdering. He has a large sword specifically forged for the purpose of killing and destroying. So if the spirit of conquest is the first horse, that's something external conquest, and red is perhaps internal subterfuge, subversion, and attack. Then there's the black horse of famine. and the accompanying effect of economic collapse, where we read something interesting, that the wine and the oil cannot be harmed by the economic collapse that the black horse of famine induces across the earth. The analogy being that because the olive trees and grape trees have firm roots, whereas the wheat and barley and everything else are just figs scatterable to the wind. The plants which are firmly rooted, analogous to the believers who are strong in the faith and firm in the foundations and have a reliable a seal to emerge victorious in spiritual warfare. Then the fourth and final horse that we meet is the pale horse of death and hell, who kills a quarter of the earth. So there is a limitation on to what can be imposed. The devil and the demonic forces cannot operate outside of the permission of Elohim, who is supremely sovereign. And death and hell, now the Messiah is identified as having the keys to the death in the grave in the 18th verse of the 18th chapter. Then the fifth seal that is open is the dead martyrs that are in their state of rest. There's going to be a multitude of martyrs, especially during the tribulation. Many will pay the price for their faith with their heads, and they are offering a prayer at the altar of the altar, which, remember, John is heavily informed and influenced by the Old Testament, so that would have been the sacrificial center of the tabernacle, where and they are praying and awaiting vengeance. They're asking, how long will it be before you avenge us on the earth? That is the contents of their prayer. And then in the sixth seal that's open is the first of three earthquakes, which are likened to judgments in the book of Revelation. The next one comes in chapter 11, verse 13. The final one comes in chapter 16, verses 18 through 19. And we also read of the darkening of the sun and the moon being reduced to blood. Remember, John is highly influenced and informed by the Old Testament, so this mimics almost identically the language of Joel 2:31. And there's going to be a whole host of abnormal natural activity that's been on the rise in the day we're in, but when this seal is finally broken. Now the continuation of the sixth seal is elaborated and more fully in its own chapter. Remember, we don't get to the seventh one, which is the second coming, until the 8th chapter, and that's nothing immediate in that. Opening verse, 7th chapter. And after this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on sea, nor on any tree. So the number 4 signifies the surrounding and the all-encompassing, the 4 corners of the earth, and they control the winds and the elements, and they are withholding it. They're not going to blow on the earth. The wind is compared by Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes to something unpredictable. No one can control it. No one can predict it. But these angels can control the weather and the winds, and they are not going to have any winds, so there's not going to be waves on any of the seas, nor leaves blowing in the air from the wind, because there's not going to be any wind, because these angels, in whom the power of the winds, who each occupy the 4 corners, the 4 extremities, east, west, north, south, of the earth, are withholding it for a purpose which will reveal itself as we read further. And I saw another angel coming up from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living Elohim. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to harm the earth and the sea. So this is another angel, and he comes from the rising of the sun, that is from the eastward direction. And we already explained in the 4th chapter the presentation of the the tribes as they gathered in the tabernacle would have been Judah would have been front and center. They were always facing to the east where the sun rose, and so Judah would have been at the front and the center. And also from the east, from the west, reminds us of the Master's own words on the end times. This is the revelation of him, but in his mortal life, he said in Matthew 24:27, he said that as the lightning flashes from the east even unto the west, so shall also the Son of the Man be. So east is sort of the a starting point of light and all that sun and stuff. So it's from the rising of the sun, and the seal he is holding the seal of the living Elohim. So that seal, it contains something significant if it belongs to and originates and emanates from the living Elohim, in whom the powers of life and death are concentrated. And he's crying with earth-shattering voice. A lot of times we read loud voice. So these are thunderous echoes in his ears. To the four angels. So these angels, these horse-riding angels who were given to punish the earth and the sea, conquest, murder, famine, and death and hell. They are, in fact, angels. The demonic are angels. They are fallen angels who joined Lucifer in his rebellion. We can read of this in Revelation 12, verse 4, for that number. And there are two books that Satan does not want you to read, Genesis and Revelation. Genesis, the first and the final chapter of the books, are perhaps Satan's least favorite. The first describes his devices. He doesn't want us to know what he did to Eve and Adam in that first couple. And there's been more scholarly attack against the book of Genesis and attempts to reduce it to myth and legend than anything else in modern academia. And Revelation, because that describes his doom. He hates reading the part where he's cast into the lake of fire, and his whole motive for being who he is and doing what he does is to bring as many people down with them through the devices which are first outlined in Genesis. Saying, do not harm the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our Elohim upon their foreheads. So they're restricted permission. They're told to halt. They have something to do before they seal the ones that are protected. These are plagues and well springs of death, riding to and fro across the earth, bringing famine, plague, and everything else with them where they travel. They are agents of death. Their specific purpose is to induce death-inducing conditions, but they have servants of Elohim who are going to be sealed on their foreheads. That means they're going to be protected. That means they're going to be spared of the slaughtering. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed, out of all the tribes of the children of Israel. So Israel will be saved. There is a remnant, only a remnant that shall be saved, to quote one of their Old Testament prophets. I think it's Isaiah or something of them. But here when we read the remnant, there's 144,000. So there's 12,000 from each tribe. And 12,000 times 12 is 144,000. 12 is of numerological significance to the Hebrew mentality and culture and tradition. There were 12 tribes of Israel, so there's a few every number has a meaning. So we already explained the meaning of the number 4, and we've done the 1-7 and several others, but there is numerological significance. And we read of the tribes from whom are sealed. Of the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Gad, 12,000 were sealed. The tribe of Asher, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Simeon, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Levi, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Issachar, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Joseph, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000 were sealed. So within each of these tribes is the exact same number of people who will be the righteous remnant, the ones who will be saved and spared the direction. In the order in which they are presented, Judah is the preeminent one because that's the one through whom the Messiah descended, and Reuben was the firstborn, but he was also front and center at the tabernacle. He was the one destined by his father Jacob to rule. He was the king and the lion and the scepter. And, all the tribes are mentioned not in the order in which they were born. But what's interesting here is also we read of two, the tribe of Manasseh and the tribe of Ephraim. So one of the tribes that isn't mentioned is the tribe of Dan. We read that Joseph, who in fact sired two half-tribes, Ephraim, the dominant one in the northern kingdom, and Manasseh, his elder son, through whom the blessing Jacob would bless the second-born of his sons. And but Dan there are several theories which abound for why they were excluded. They turned to idolatry as early as Judges 18, and they were a part of the northern kingdom, and as such would have been, more prolific idolaters. They're the tribe from which Samson sprang, and several early Christian commentators, there was a tradition or a grapevine thing of sorts that suggested that it was from the tribe of Dan that the anti-Messiah would come. And there's no way to prove that. I'm just putting it out there that that's what a lot of them believed. And I looked and saw a great crowd, of which no one was able to count, out of all nations and tribes and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, dressed in white robes and palm branches in their hands. So it's a great crowd. It's a multitude. There's a quantitative element in the greatness because it's beyond measure, it's beyond count, it's beyond estimation. But it is comprised of the universality of the peoples of the earth, all cultures, all tongues, all tribes, all nations, all ethnicities. They are alike standing before the throne and before the Lamb, that is the Son, the Messiah, and they are all dressed in white robes, and white, that means they have undergone repentance. That's what white robes signifies. Remember, the color, there's a lot of symbolic significance not only to the numbers, but the colors in the book of Revelation. Standing before the throne. Oh, and palm branches, it's interesting here. They're greeting him and approaching him the same way that he entered in triumphantly on the donkey in accordance to the prophecy of Zechariah 9:9, and it's called Palm Sunday because that's what they waved when he came in. And crying out with a loud voice, saying, "Salvation belongs to our Elohim, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb." So they're crying once more. There's that element of an earth-shaking voice, and the contents of their prayer is acknowledging that the sole source, the exclusive concentration of salvation belongs to, can be shared from, and can only emanate from the Elohim who sits on the throne and his Son, the Lamb. So this is a hymn, and it's also an expression of praise. And this is, it's not exactly clear who's saying this. These are the people saying that. So these are the saved from all tribes, all tongues, all nations, all cultures. These are the ones who are at the throne. They are people. They're not angels. They're earthly beings transplanted to heavenly places, and they are acknowledging that they are saved, and their salvation belongs to, and was accomplished by start to finish by the author of not only life, but the plan of salvation, which can give us eternal life. And all the angels stood around the throne, and the elders and the four living creatures, and fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped Elohim. Now, a lot of these groups of people we've met before. There's angels in heaven. Obviously, the elders are the ones that are number 24. We can read of them in Revelation 4. and the 24 of them. Then there's the living creatures. There's 4 of them, likened to a lion, an ox, a man, and an eagle. In the 4th chapter, and we explain this. We don't have enough time to delve into that, but we explain the New Testament interpretation and ultimately endorse the Old Testament interpretation. You can type in Corey Johnston Revelation 4 for more on that. But they're all, they're all in worship. They're all submitted. They're all humbling themselves in abject surrender and worship to Elohim, who is seated on the throne. And how are they worshiping him? What are they saying? Well, we find that out in the next verse. Saying, Amen, the blessing and the esteem and the wisdom and the thanksgiving and the respect and the power and the might to our Elohim forever and ever. Amen. So these are befitting things that we acknowledge as belonging to him. Also salvation. He is also the source of all blessings, and the one through whom the esteemed one. He is highly esteemed among the believers, and he esteems them, maybe not in the world, but certainly to the shame of the world. And wisdom, he is an omniscient being. That's the attribute of infinite or unlimited intelligence. So wisdom is not a strong enough word for his intelligence. And, of course, gratitude and respect are things we owe him. That's the least we can do. This is not extra credit for us on our behalf. This is the mandatory minimal obligation. And because he is eternal, he is worthy, and he's also, power and might are again understatements. He is an omnipotent being, which is the attribute of unlimited or infinite strength and power. Verses 13 and 14 are a question and answer exchange. So the question is asked by the elder, one of the elders. It doesn't say which one, we'll just read the verse. And one of the elders responded, saying to me, Who are these dressed in white robes, and where did they come from? And I said to him, Master, you know. And he said to me, These are those coming from the great distress, having washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So the proliferation of martyrdom is going to be alive and well after these deadly horses are released on the earth. There's going to be a lot of skulls of saints are going to be claimed in this tribulation, and these are the great distress. That's another word for the tribulation. It is great because it is of preeminent prominence and significance, and they were washed in the blood of the Lamb. Now, the blood of the Lamb was already shed for them, but they shed their own blood for the Lamb. And once more, this is not martyrdom and atonement are completely different things. They're not even in the same ballpark or league. None of this. We are not saved or secured by any of the martyrdoms of the saints, although many did seal their salvation by embracing the calling, and that's something we may have to embrace in our own lifetime. I'm not here to sell you fear, but the tribulation could come to pass in our lifetime, and it will be likened to a woman giving birth to a child. It will be the most painful thing imaginable, followed by the greatest blessing and joy, after which all the pain we endured is instantly and permanently eliminated. Because of this, they say they are before the throne of Elohim, and serve him day and night in his dwelling place, and he who sits on the throne shall dwell among them. So daily, all day duty, day and night. This is the service and continual duty. Service is the continual duty not only of the angels in heaven, but the Christians on earth. And what awaits us, we have a preview. There's going to be angels and elders and living creatures whose entire lives consist of giving perpetual praise in the dwelling place. They are in the throne room and are grateful to be there, and so overwhelmed are they by his majesty that they cannot help but bow themselves and pray without end for all eternity to the one who is eternal and deigns to share his eternality with us unworthy creatures. Of course, the angels and the elders are more worthy than, and the creatures are more worthy than most of us, but we only got a few more, 2 more verses to cover. Verse 16, they shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more. Neither shall the sun strike them, nor any heat. So he's writing to a desert-dwelling people. Of course, the Israelites were desert-dwelling. The audience he's writing from the Isle of Patmos, but this was definitely meant to be spread and shared to give the saints, not to satisfy their curiosity about yet-to-be-fulfilled future, but to give them hope to endure in the present, because the Great Tribulation, there are many tribulations which are individual in scope that come before the Great Tribulation. So, no one wants to have their internal heat magnified by the heat of the sun while in the desert. And hunger, there's not a lot of life forms to hunt for out there, and water is scarce. Because of the Lamb who is in the midst of the throne shall shepherd them and lead them to fountains of waters of life. And Elohim shall wipe away every tear from their eyes. So therein we read a preview and a portend of the New Jerusalem, the city where all pain, all anguish, all tears, there's no reason to cry because there's nothing to cry about. It is a splendid paradise, restored and made whole. Part of the redeemed creation is a redeemed Jerusalem. And that is one of the things that the martyrs have a preview here. He describes it more fully in chapter 21, and verse 4 is the one that is relevant to the closing things. Wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, nor mourning, nor sadness in Revelation 21:4. But we already did one on that. You can type in Corey Johnston, Revelation 21, the new heavens, the new earth, and perhaps the new Jerusalem. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.